So we are talking about inflammation today. For those of you who hear this buzzword go around, I mean, a lot of people like to talk about inflammation, and it's for a good reason. It's a very common theme that we got going in our society today because of lifestyle habits, food choices, all of those things. So, hi, Melissa. So I'm going to kind of dive in here. As soon as Joelle gets on, we're going to define inflammation. We're going to go through a list of foods that are inflammatory versus anti-inflammatory foods, and we're going to give you all the good stuff for you guys to take away and apply. So as soon as I see her come on, I will get her on here. But I feel like inflammation because it has become such a hot topic, it's one of those things that is like, here we go. She's right here. Let's let her on. She's coming out. Hello.
Hi, did it work? Okay, we're good.
Yeah, and we're not echoing, so that's
perfect.
All right, so I was just starting to dive into inflammation, just talking about how it's a very hot topic, and I feel like a lot of people really don't know what exactly it means or what it is, and know that it's
right.
like a natural biological process, but it has gone awry because of our environment, our what we eat on a daily basis, and the chemicals that we're exposed to. So can you break down and like kind of define inflammation for people so that they can understand exactly what it is?
I can. So basically, it's a localized reaction that can occur. Can be from many different factors, including trauma, could be from foods that we are eating. So it basically produces redness, warmth, swelling, could be pain. It can be internal, it can be external. It can manifest for people in many different ways. And like you were saying before, sometimes it is a good thing because it's a protection for the body. And sometimes if we have too much inflammation, then, that's not a good thing either. So we want that healthy balance.
Yeah, I think that inflammation is it's not that it's a good thing, but it's given such a bad rap. Like everyone's like, inflammation, I'm inflamed, and it's like,
right.
Well, let's take a step back and look at why you're inflamed. You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
Let's kind of stop putting the blame on the body, because I feel like a lot of people do that all the time. They're like, oh, I'm inflamed. I'm like, well, why are you inflamed? You know what I mean?
I spend a lot of time working with my patients trying to get to the root cause of why are you inflamed? What's really going on? Is it a healthy inflammation or is it unhealthy? So yeah, I totally understand. And some patients freak out when they hear the word inflammation. You don't need to freak out. It just means we have some things that we have to work on.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the main thing that I want to hone in on is that this is not your body messing up. Like your body isn't messing up. It's actually doing something that it's supposed to do because you're putting it under a certain stressor or under a certain chemical or under a certain or it's in a certain state of dysbiosis or something like that, where it actually, it has no choice but to tell you in some way. So it's your body's way. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's your body's way of telling you there's something going on that we need to look at. Sometimes, again, it can be something good, it can be something bad, but it's definitely, something to be aware of. And I know a lot of times patients are not aware of it, and they, like you said, they kind of freak out. I have inflammation. Oh my gosh, what do I do? When in reality, it's really helping us diagnose something that might be going on.
Yeah. So essentially, exactly what she said. The point of this intro here is to kind of turn your mind around on the idea of inflammation and kind of make you ask why. Why am I inflamed? Relative to being like, well, I have inflammation. You know what I mean? So, and the media and not the media, but this health and wellness industry has kind of capitalized on that word, inflammation. And like you said, people are like scared of it. So people are like trying to find the anti-inflammatory, or, take the turmeric because it's anti-inflammatory. But really what we need to focus on is we need to, and this is what we're going to talk about in a little bit, we need to hone in on why the inflammation is there instead of trying to combat the inflammation. So I think that
Right.
that's
You have
super important.
right. You have to find the root cause, like we've been talking about before. And if you're not finding the root cause, you're just putting band-aids on everything, and that's not going to work either. So
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, that's the beauty of the type of medicine that you practice, though. It's root causal medicine, and you're trying to find
absolutely.
what is causing the symptom instead of trying to bury the symptom with like a medication or something like that. So,
Correct.
that's why I love alternative medicine as well, because obviously I've been down that road before of trying to, mask the symptoms, and that's not the way anyone
Right.
wants to go or live their life. So
Right.
we're going to go and talk about now the top causes of inflammation that we see. So I'm going to let you, Joelle, go through your top causes, and then I'm going to mention some that I often see, and then we'll go back and forth.
So I'd say, big one that I see is absolutely food. So different types of food causing inflammation, especially if patients have leaky gut or digestive health issues. Certain foods can offset them. One is gluten, another is dairy. Those are two really big ones that I see. Another is, pain. So I treat a lot of pain patients. So I see it with, knee pain, shoulder pain, hip pain, joint pain. Those are big ones. I'd say probably diet, though, is probably one of the biggest ones that I see.
Yeah, 100%. So all of the ones that you just said were a lot of the ones that I had. So obviously, mine are a lot of gut ones, because most of the inflammation, like you said, stems from either leaky gut, candida, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and stuff like that. I also have on mine man-made chemicals and certain foods that people ingest on a day-to-day basis that's basically causing chronic inflammation because your body's just constantly inflamed. The last one I have on there is breast implants, because I've witnessed that myself.
Right.
So for those of you who haven't obviously heard my story or seen my story, you can go look on my page. I did a full live on that. But that's another one I had on there. So I kind of wanted to go into, obviously, we're going to dive into the gut, because the gut is where a majority of the inflammation resides normally when people have, bad lifestyle, dieting, and all that stuff, the types of foods they're choosing, etc. So I kind of wanted to talk about food sensitivities, because this is also a hot topic. And I feel like a lot of people don't really realize like the symptoms of food sensitivity. So in your practice, what would you say is like the top inflammations, the top causes of inflammation that you see, and how do you normally remedy them? Because I know food sensitivities is kind of be up there, so I would like you to go into that a little bit.
So obviously the number one that I absolutely see is sugar. Sugar is a huge one that sometimes gets forgotten, but is a major cause of inflammation. Can cause swelling. So that's probably one of the biggest ones. Then the next is gluten, and then the next is dairy. And after people eat those, their symptoms can manifest in many different ways. I know we've kind of talked about that before, but I'd say those are the biggest ones. And then how I work, I just work with patients on healthy lifestyle habits, working on getting in proper macronutrients, good carbohydrates, proteins, good fats. I talk to them about a lot of times vegetables. A lot of times patients don't want to eat vegetables. So, going through their vegetable intake with them, that's a huge one. And then cutting out the processed foods. So they don't always love me for that, but I do the best that I can.
That's so funny, because I literally wrote down in the section where I was like talking about, so what do we do about it? And then I talk about elimination, and I'm like, don't get mad. Like telling our clients, like, we really are trying to help you, I promise. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. What I was going to say too is with food sensitivities, obviously leaky gut is a big thing when it comes to food sensitivities, and actually one can cause the other and vice versa. So it's very interesting to me that I see more common and more often now that a lot of people will be like, holy crap, my food sensitivity test, I have so many food sensitivities. And I'm like, that is indicative of leaky gut, which is essentially systematic inflammation in your gut. and it's chronic inflammation that is going on every single time you eat. So I feel like that one is like
Right.
a big one when it comes to people, like it's not diagnosed. And I feel like a lot of people, again, I don't diagnose things because I'm not a doctor, but I feel like that would be one of the things that you see a lot, is the leaky gut and high food sensitivity. So what does that look like symptom wise?
So everyone is different. Everyone can come in with, a whole list of different symptoms. So like I have some patients and it's all digestive symptoms. So they're coming in with, either gas or bloating, maybe some cramping. Sometimes it's diarrhea, sometimes it's constipation. I also have patients who come with migraines or severe headaches. Swelling in their joints is another big one that I see, working with a lot of orthopedic patients as well. So I see a lot of joint pain.
Yeah.
I'd say those are probably the biggest things that I see, especially because our health is in our digestive tract. So if it's not working the way that it should, then, random symptoms could pop up. I had another patient actually the other day who came in with rash, like a giant rash all over his body. That's a clear sign right there too. Yeah.
So, again, guys, food sensitivity symptoms are stuff like, and this is where I want to kind of talk about IgG and IgE. IgG sensitivities are delayed reactions in the body, and these are normally what doctors will kind of, they will test for in the IgG and not the IgE, because the IgE is an immediate reaction, which most of you guys know, like, for example, when you consume dairy and all of a sudden you feel like you're going to throw up, or it's going to come out the other end. That's
right.
an IgE reaction. Or if you immediately get bloated, or you immediately get constipated, or something like that. Or if you eat peanuts and all of a sudden your throat starts to swell up, that's an IgE reaction. An IgG reaction is a delayed response. And this is why food sensitivity tests are very important, because it can be anywhere from 24 to 72 hours that you get the reaction. And the reactions are just what Dr. Fox just talked about right now, which when she talked about brain fog is one that I see a lot. Brain fog.
Yeah, I see that too.
Joint pain. Yeah. Joint pain, skin rashes, just not feeling like yourself, anxiety, depression, stuff like that. Those are those IgG reactions that are delayed responses. So as you can see, it can be kind of hard sometimes to pinpoint if you're getting the reaction 3 days later. I mean, I can't even remember what I ate yesterday, like half the time,
It's, yeah,
that's why it becomes
it's difficult. Yeah. So like I was just going to say, I have a lot of patients do diet diaries, because then we can kind of track.
Yeah.
So I have them, write down what they're eating, being as specific as possible. I always tell them, if you bite it, you write it. So it goes down.
Yeah.
And then, I have them write down any symptoms. Even if they notice something a couple of days later, I want them to write it, because sometimes we can see a correlation. Sometimes it's not so easy, like you said. It could happen a couple of days later. Sometimes it can be immediate. And I have them write that down, because that also helps me to kind of determine what's really going on.
Yeah, and that's really important what you just said too. When it comes to kind of, I have clients do the same thing when they diary down how they're feeling after they eat. Especially, it becomes really easy when they're tracking in MyFitnessPal, like for a macro challenge,
right.
for example. Because you already have all your food in your food diary. All you need to do is kind of be like, meal 2, after I ate, an hour after I ate, I got bloating. Well, what did you eat in that meal? Was it dairy? Did you consume dairy in that meal? Stuff like that is super, super helpful for the professionals that are helping you with your diet and with your symptoms, for sure. So I kind of want to talk about now, like, the top, when it comes, you already mentioned them, the top 3,
sure,
what we'll call the big 3. My big 3 are going to be obviously gluten, like you said, dairy, and then eggs. Eggs is something that I see a lot more often now, and I have an experience too with having an intolerance to eggs as well. So what are your top, like, 3 that you would say when someone is having some type of digestive distress? What would you like
sure.
pinpoint immediately and be like, these are the 3 things that you probably should eliminate in order to combat that?
I don't know if I have three. I'd say definitely the top two that I usually have my patients stay away from, at least for like a couple weeks, just to kind of see, is gluten and dairy, like you said. Those two are ones that I see a lot of times causing a lot of trouble. And so I'll have patients stop it for a couple weeks. And then I have them come back in and kind of, check in with me, see how they're doing. And a lot of times they say, oh my gosh, I feel so much better, now that I've just given up those two foods. Obviously, there's, other smaller ones, like you said, eggs, sometimes sugar, different types of grains and carbohydrates can cause issues. But I'd say those are probably the two biggest ones.
Now, when you eliminate foods, do you tell people to eliminate them longer than a week normally?
I do. So when I'm doing food sensitivity testing and I'm doing elimination diets with patients, I am telling them that they need to eliminate it for 30 days. I say, just give me 30 days. Then we can kind of reset your system. I'll put you on some really good, gut healing supplements to kind of help facilitate everything. But yeah, I say 30 days. I say, we're not going to take it out forever, but just give me 30 days. Because then, you start to see changes. And if you start to add foods back in, then you can kind of play around with it and see how you're feeling. But most of the time, it takes about that time to get it out of your system.
Yeah. So, guys, you are not going to see immediate results and feel 10 times better from eliminating dairy or gluten for 1 week. That is one thing that we got to drive home here. And we have I don't have anything against gluten and dairy. Like, I really don't. There's nothing against them. I don't hate those foods. They taste great. But the problem is that they are known scientifically to cause digestive distress and inflammation in the body. It's science. So I'm not being mean. Dr. Fox isn't being mean.
I promise. I'm trying not to.
So you have to eliminate it longer than a week, okay? And that means longer than 48 hours too. I have people that get so mad at me.
I know. I do too.
Like I'm literally going to I'm taking away their life.
I know. It does not get any easier, trust me, because I've been doing this for a long time, and it does not get easier. Patients hate me, and I say, I promise, you can add it back in. Just give me the 30 days, and you will feel so much better. And then sometimes, after they fought me so hard, they come back in, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm never putting those foods back into my diet. I felt awful after eating them. So I'm like, see, all it was 30 days. I promise you'll feel so much better.
Yeah, and that's 30 days. If you do a food sensitivity test, guys, that's 30 days for the foods that you have minor sensitivities to. Like I would say the foods that you have severe sensitivity to, it's way longer than that. You need to give the gut a adequate time to heal from that inflammation. And like we said before, it's a majority of the time what's happening too is there's a leaky component if there's a lot of food sensitivities. So that just means that you need to eliminate those foods even longer because you want to heal the gut and seal it up before you start adding stuff like that back in. Because it's an irritant, and you can't just keep irritating the gut lining and expect it to heal. It just doesn't work like that. So yeah. So so now that we kind of went over the foods to kind of avoid, which we have more. What are some foods that we can replace the dairy and the gluten with, so that people can feel like, okay, when they go grocery shopping and go to the store, they have these replacement items. So it's like dairy X, and then circle, these replacement items so that they know. What are your top things for gluten and dairy?
So obviously there's a lot of good alternatives out there for both gluten and dairy products. Again, you want to be careful, and I talked about last week with reading the labels on the products, but there's all different types of alternative milk. So there's almond milk, there's rice milk, hemp milk. I think there's now flaxseed milk. So there's rice milk. There's all different alternatives out there. And then the same thing with gluten products. There's one thing that I've been really into is there's almond flour crackers. Taste amazing. You would never know that they were gluten-free. Still, decently healthy. Obviously, they're still crackers, and, probably not the best carbohydrates, but you know, there's good alternatives out there.
Yeah.
You just, you know, I have lists that I give my patients too. So, you know, if patients do want those, we can send them out. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you just have to read the labels and make sure. Again, like I talked about last week too, is you want to stay on the perimeter of the grocery stores anyway.
Yeah.
So I try not to have my patients buy those processed foods.
Yeah. It just adds more assault to injury, especially when your gut is in a bad state. So remember, guys,
Right.
it's temporary, and we're trying to heal and seal the gut, and that's essentially what needs to happen, that process. So, like she said, almond milks. We live in a society now where it's like you have access to these things. So it's just about being educated and you know, kind of just being an advocate for yourself when it comes to going grocery shopping and just knowing what you're putting in your body. So when someone says eliminate dairy, or even if you no one tells you to and you just want to see, just eliminate the dairy and replace it. Most of the time it's milk or some type of whey protein. Replace the whey protein with a vegan protein. That's like a rice or pea blend of some sort, or even hemp. Another thing is to use almond milk, cashew milk, all of those nut milk alternatives that she talked about. What else? Oh, for gluten, obviously there's a lot of carbohydrates that don't have gluten in them, and surprisingly, the ones that grow from the earth are the best ones for you. So you probably should use stuff like sweet potatoes, or gluten-free oats
Absolutely.
are really good as well. So those would
Quinoa.
be my top alternatives.
Quinoa is also another good one. And then I know patients, this is like a big one. They hate giving up their pasta. Absolutely hate it. You know, don't want to give it up. But there are good alternatives. You can do quinoa pasta. There is brown rice pasta. So I do allow my patients to do that. But you also have to remember that a lot of the gluten-free products, just because it's gluten-free, doesn't mean it's healthier. So you do have to watch out for that
100%.
too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point, because
Yeah.
there's a lot of additives in the gluten-free stuff that, like emulsifiers, essentially, that make it the soft texture that the gluten would normally make it. So that makes sense 100%. So just, you guys, read your labels, like she said. So I want to let's go into, okay, so some more inflammatory foods would be farm-raised fish versus wild-caught fish. Not many people pay attention to this, and I think that this is one of the top ones for me because I eat so much fish. I pay very close attention to the quality of the proteins that I'm eating. Why farm-raised fish would be a little bit, not a little bit, but a lot more inflammatory than wild-caught is because, especially tilapia, guys, just don't eat tilapia. And that's my personal opinion, but it grosses me out. Mainly because of the way that it's farmed. And in farming, essentially, and I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but I'm going to kind of. When you are farm raising fish, a lot of the times those fish are put in these tiny little pens like this big, and there's like 5 million fish in there, and they're squished together, and they're stressed out, and they're feeding them things that they're not supposed to be fed. And that is essentially one of the reasons why I think in my head that the farm raised salmon is that light pink color, and the other type of salmon, the wild caught Atlantic salmon, is that red color. I feel like it has something to do with the way it's fed, the way that it's stressed out its whole entire life. I'm sorry, my other phone is going off and it's really annoying. Sorry about that. It's a client phone. So that's a big one. And let's talk about oils, because this is one that a lot of people don't really understand. So what are the inflammatory oils that you would say?
So like your vegetable oils, canola oil, sometimes they say like sunflower oil or safflower oil you want to be careful with. But canola oil, vegetable oils, those are probably your biggest ones. And those tend to be in a lot of processed foods.
Yep. Yeah. Those ones are big ones. Mainly, guys, it's because I'm pretty sure it's like 90% of canola oil is genetically modified. And we will go into the details of that right now, what the difference between organic and genetically modified foods are. But this is a good segue into that. Additionally, the last one I have on here, alternatives to the corn oil, canola oil, vegetable oil, stuff like that. Alternatives would be stuff like coconut oil or olive oil. Olive oil, I feel like, is God's gift to earth. And mainly because a lot of people, what they don't realize is that there's been a lot of research, and they call olive oil like the cancer fighting food, because it's actually been shown that it like pierces like the liposomal layers of cancer cells and helps like combat it. It's like something crazy like that, which I think is really cool, because not a lot of people utilize like olive oil anymore, because they're like, oh, I really don't want to cook with fats and stuff like that. It's like, don't cook with it, pour it over your food and use that as a fat source. That's what I do all the time. I do that with coconut oil and olive oil.
Yeah. So if you do want to cook with oil, avocado oil or walnut oil, I believe it is, have higher heat. So you want to use those instead. Yeah, and you can get them in spray form as well. I know Costco carries an avocado oil spray. I think that's what I've been using. But yeah, definitely, oils like that. Your nut oils are great. Coconut, like you said, avocado oil, those are all perfect alternatives.
Cool. And then the last one is artificial sweeteners. I'm sure you and I can both go on and on about artificial sweeteners all damn day, but essentially artificial sweeteners, I'm talking about the chemical ones, the ones that are created in a laboratory, like sucralose, aspartame. What are some other ones? Joelle?
You have your sugar alcohols also. So your erythritol, sorbitol. What's another one that they use? I can't even think. But like those ones as well, you also have to be careful with.
Yeah. So,
but yeah, they
guys,
can be inflammatory.
So those are all gut irritants. Essentially, your gut is not necessarily meant to break down all these chemicals that we produce now on a day-to-day basis, and we throw in the food, and then we're like, here you go. Figure out how to break it down. Those can cause a lot of digestive distress. In addition, I'm pretty sure, I can't remember if it's sucralose or aspartame, has chlorine in it, which is actually really bad for your gut microbiome and also really bad for your thyroid. So those are both negatives to that as well.
You also want to be careful with aspartame. Not a lot of people know this, but it can turn into formaldehyde. So that's what they use for embalming dead people. So you do want to be careful with aspartame.
I didn't even know that. That's cool and gross at the same time.
Right? I know. And it isn't a lot of like products. So like even gum, like I think 5 gum has aspartame in it. Sometimes the sodas or like carbonated waters and drinks have aspartame. So definitely be careful with that.
Yeah. And I feel like it's one of those things too that a lot of people they're like, oh, artificial sweeteners, 0 calories. And I think Will said this one time in a live where I literally should have been sponsored by Walden Farms when I was competing in bikini competitions. But it's really true, guys, and it's really sad. And that's probably one of the things that contributed to my gut health being so bad. I had leaky gut, candida, probably had SIBO. I was a mess, and that's for sure one of the things. I used to pour Walden Farm syrup on all of my food. I used to, at one point, I tried that marshmallow fluff that literally is just chemicals. I don't know what. I didn't know, though. And I feel like that's why it's so important, you know what I mean, that we educate people on what they're consuming, because I didn't know. No one told me that. I was like, oh, 0 calories. Heck yes, I'm going to eat it all up.
Right.
So, I mean, I was like, how is this 0 calories and tastes so good? It's chemicals. That's how.
Right. So, I think Will was talking about last week too, how he was eating the Jello, sugar-free Jello.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just because it has 0 calories does not mean that it's always healthy.
Yeah. So that's definitely a good point to drive home, because I know I've fell victim to that too as well. So the last thing that I want to touch on is organic and non-GMO. I believe that's the last thing. Yeah, non-GMO foods. So organic foods, that's obviously a really hot topic for a good reason as well. So what is defined, like what's the difference between a conventional and an organic food in your eyes?
I mean, it's basically just the way that the food is processed and grown. I was actually looking that up earlier. So the USDA has a really good website and information on it, but according to them and their guidelines, it says that the food has to be grown and processed according to their guidelines in good quality soil that doesn't have pesticides and weeds, doesn't have any additives, and then the soil has to be clean for 3 years before the produce can be harvested. So you definitely want to read the labels. I think I was reading also that they have to label, whether it's 100% organic or 70% organic or 90% organic. So you do want to be careful with that. But basically, it just means it's got little to no pesticides, and the pesticides, if we end up consuming them, can cause a lot of different problems. They can become endocrine disruptors, basically causing thyroid problems, causing problems for your adrenal glands. Again, the digestive health. So yeah, you do want to be careful with that.
So that was another thing too that I think that kind of went awry whenever I was, thinking that I was eating healthy when I didn't know, like 4 years ago. I was just eating tons and tons of the same foods, for one, so causing myself food sensitivities. For two, I was eating foods very, very high in pesticides because I thought that organic stuff was a joke. Yes, I thought that. The third thing was the artificial sweeteners. So I was essentially creating the perfect storm in my body, in addition to having breast implants. So chemicals were just leaching into every system of my body. So I was just a big, huge walking chemical, essentially. And it ended up catching up with me real fast. And I feel like the perfect storm sometimes people create for themselves, and they don't really realize it until it's kind of like, not that it's too late, it's just that all of a sudden what happens is your theoretical rain barrel starts to overflow, and that's when the symptoms start to persist in the body. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that you're educated enough that you either stop the symptoms as they start, and you start to clean up your diet, your lifestyle habits, all that stuff, or you prevent the symptoms from starting, because your rain barrel that fills up with chemicals can only handle so many chemicals before it overflows. And when I'm talking about chemicals, I'm talking about all of the environmental toxins, all of the pesticides, all of the lifestyle habits, the eating the same foods, and all of that stuff. It does add up, and so that's what we're trying to drive home here. Essentially, sorry, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but organic. So for whoever doesn't believe in organic foods, it's absolutely, they are better alternatives to conventional foods for your gut, for your hormones, like she said, for basically every part of, your lymphatic system, your liver, everything like that. So it's super important, guys. So
absolutely.
And I know that people cannot eat, all organic all the time. That's not realistic, and I understand that. So there's a really good resource. It's the EWG's Clean 15 and Dirty Dozen. Go take a look at that report. And it tells you when you can't find a organic option, or if you can't always buy organic, what you can be quote unquote safe buying conventional. So that's a really important resource as well.
Yeah, they also had a oh, sorry. I was just going to say really quickly too, the Environmental Working Group. So that website also has a giant list of foods that are GMO versus non-GMO. So for those looking for, non-GMO products, that has a really good resource for it as well.
Another thing too, since we're on the topic of the EWG website, that's really, really cool, is they actually have an app. And this is an app that I use all of the time now.
Oh, yeah.
To go into the grocery store, and when you are, you can scan the barcodes of like beauty products, and it will rate the beauty product, because we're talking about chemicals here, and chemicals in all avenues. Women that put stuff on their face. I mean, think about how many products we go through, lotions and potions, and hairspray and all that stuff. Scan the product, and it's the EWG app. Scan the product and look, and it'll rate it. If it's in the red, that means that it's really, really bad. And if it's in the yellow or green, it makes it very easy to to decide what you
Right.
want to include and what you don't want to include. So that's also a very, very good resource. I use that all the time now that I know that it exists. And then there's another one as well called, I think it's called Think Dirty. And that one is
Maybe.
a good resource as well. Yeah. So the last thing is GMO foods. So GMO, I feel like the non-GMO project, another, we have a lot of buzzwords in this live.
We do.
The GMO and non-GMO project and all that stuff. So GMO is genetically modified organism. So what does that mean, Dr. Fox?
I mean, basically, somewhere along the lines, scientists and chemists started changing the genetic makeup of different foods so that it could withstand, different insects or pesticides and grow quicker, faster. A big one that they've done that with is corn. So corn is a huge one that they're really genetically modifying. And unfortunately, corn is what's in a lot of foods and processed foods. So you have to be careful with that.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so essentially a genetically modified organism is something that they took a food and they genetically modified the DNA structure in a laboratory to make it either more resistant to pesticide spraying or chemical fertilizers or whatever it is. So that food does not occur naturally in nature. It is a fake food.
No.
So yeah,
basically,
so
yes.
you can imagine what was that?
I said, yeah, I agree.
Okay. Yeah. So you can imagine, like we had talked about with chemicals before, what that could possibly do to your body, because essentially your body's trying to break something down that has never existed in nature before. So it just makes sense. And now they're seeing that, high consumptions of GMO foods are now related to stuff like liver and kidney damage. It's like a light bulb should go on in people's heads that your body is not meant to consume those foods. So that's why non-GMO and organic labels are very, very important and should be used together when you're grocery shopping and choosing the foods that you eat a majority of the week. So
absolutely.
But yeah, I hope you guys got a lot of take homes. Joelle, do you have anything to add here?
No, I mean, I think we covered it all. Obviously, if people have more questions, they can message me, they can message you. Happy to chat with people one-on-one, no problem.
Cool. And I just want to mention, guys, our registration for our 30-day challenge, we actually teach this stuff exactly that we're teaching. We've done a lot of like free content lives these past couple of weeks. I feel like we basically had like a little mini lunch date every week.
We did.
But all of this stuff is basically going to be taken into the 30-day challenge group, because we gotta have that community, make it really cool, and obviously give as much value as we can to the clients and participants that we have in our challenge. So we're gonna move all of this awesome information into the 30-day challenge group. Dr. Fox and I will be going live during the weeks. Will be going live on motivational aspects. This is all stuff that we will include, including obviously your macros, your exercise prescriptions. So it's all about internal health. This is the stuff that we love. This is the stuff that's going to keep you healthy longer, well beyond your diet and your exercise regimens. It's all about longevity and, healthy aging. So essentially that's what we try to, bring home here. So registration closes on Sunday at midnight. We'll drop a link below if you really liked this live and you want to continue to, absorb this information and kind of better your health in that way. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a great night.
Thank you.